Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. In today's video, I've put together a collection of my favorite handmade Mother's Day gift ideas. I also just wanted to wish all of the wonderful mums watching a happy Mother's Day. For my first project, I'm going to be working on this little bird statue. I did pick this up at the thrift store, but I believe they're also at one of the dollar stores here in Australia. My first step is to put some of Dixie Belle's chocolate chalk mineral paint in a container, and then I'm going to add some of Dixie Belle's Sea Spray texture additive. This is definitely my go-to when it comes to creating some texture on a piece, creating some interest. So I'm stirring that really well. You can see it's thickened up nicely, and then I'm going to take a chip brush and I'm going to start dabbing and stippling the product onto my little birds. You can find a full product list in the description below and all these products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. My vision for this project was a statue that's perhaps sat in the garden for many years and has become weathered and worn, and this sea spray is going to be a really great base for that look. Once my sea spray has dried, I'm going to take Dixie Belle's Iron Patina paint and I'm going to be putting it in a few areas on these birds. I'm first going to stir it really well. You want to get all of those little metal particles stirred up really well, and then I'm going to dab the product on. By dabbing it on, I'm going to create a little bit more texture. Now, I always put a little bit more on than I'm going to need because I like to come in later and actually layer some more paint over the top of it so that it looks a little bit more like natural age. So I'm going to dab that Iron Patina paint on. And once I have that layer on, I'm then also going to be coming in with Dixie Belle's Bronze Patina paint. The Iron Patina paint will give us a rust look. The bronze paint usually gives us a blue-green sort of a patina. So I'm stirring up the bronze paint really well, just like we did with the first one, and then I'm going to dab that on. I did end up drying the Iron Patina paint before I came in with the bronze, just so I didn't have too much of them mixing. So again, I'm just picking certain areas where I'm going to apply that product, and then I'm going to let both these layers dry. When you're using patina paint, you want to put down your first coat, let it dry, and then you're going to come in with a second coat. And while that coat is still wet is when you come in with the green activation spray. You will not get a patinaed result if your patina paint isn't wet. So we're coming in with our wet coat now. You can see that I'm adding the Iron Patina first, and then I will come in with the bronze. I am trying my best not to contaminate the colors. I'm just trying to keep the different patina paints in their different sections. And then while my paint is still wet, I am going to be using some of that green activation spray. I've put it in a smaller bottle here and I'm just going to spray it all over my little birds there. Patina paint can be very unpredictable. Sometimes it activates the entire thing, sometimes there's only bits and pieces, and sometimes the colors are a little bit different, but that's the beauty of it. It's going to give you that beautifully aged look. I then left this to dry overnight. And here is the result the next day. You can see I have some rust, I have some of that blue-green patina. I'm now going to come in with some of Dixie Belle's Umber Silk Mineral Paint, and you can see I'm dabbing it all over the little birds, but I'm allowing some of that patina that we created to peek through. I don't want to cover all of it, but I also don't want all of it showing because it doesn't look very realistic right now. But once I'm coming in and layering that umber paint over the top of it, it starts to look a little bit more natural. So I'm just going to dab and stipple that all over in random sections, allowing some of the rust, allowing some of that blue-green patina to peek through. Once it's dry, you can see here that it's looking a lot more naturally aged. I'm now going to come in with some of Dixie Belle's Gloss Clear Coat, and I'm going to seal the entire piece. Now, Umber Silk Mineral Paint does have a built-in sealer, but I didn't cover the whole area with it, so I just want to make sure that I have the entire piece sealed for our next step. Once the clear coat had dried, I grabbed some of Dixie Belle's whitewash glaze and I'm working it into the detail of those little birds. I'm making sure that it's going into all of the little creases of the wings, into the details of the face, and then I'm going to take a wet wipe and I'm going to dab and pull back some of that excess. This is going to give it, again, a weathered look. It's going to look a little bit oxidized, and I'm going to make sure that I do get majority of the white off the sections where the patina is, because I do still want to be able to see that peeking through. If you want to achieve a similar look but you don't have that white glaze, you could use a white wax for this step instead, or perhaps create a white paint wash with a watered down chalk paint. And here's a look at our finished bird statue. I love how this turned out. All of that layering has really helped to create a beautiful weathered and worn look. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For our first project, I'm going to be using these hardcover books that I thrifted. I am going to be covering them with drop cloth. Now, I've done this before. I will make sure that I include the video where I have quite an in-depth tutorial on this. But basically, I've got the drop cloth, I've laid the book down on top of it, and I am just measuring out to make sure that it's going to fit each of the books the same. And then I'm going to cut out 3 lengths of the drop cloth. Because the drop cloth is a little bit see-through and my books are a few different colors, I'm going to paint each of them with 1 coat of Dixie Belle's Cashmere chalk mineral paint. This is a lovely cream tone. It's going to be a really great base. I just didn't want to be able to see the different colors underneath. I felt like it would detract from the design that we're going to create. So each one of these is going to get 1 coat. Next, I'm going to use my little craft iron and I'm going to iron the drop cloth a little bit. This is just going to smooth it out a little bit to make there be less wrinkles when I'm covering each of the books. Next, we're going to start covering the books. I've laid out my drop cloth. I'm going to position my book and then I'm going to be using hot glue to attach it today. So I'm going to open up the cover. I'm going to lay down a strip of hot glue. Make sure you're being really careful while you're doing this. Then I'm going to lift the book up and then very carefully press the side of the drop cloth down. I'm just using a little transfer stick to do this so I don't burn my fingers. I'm repeating the same process on the other side, although I did have to trim off a little bit of excess drop cloth here. Make sure as you're doing this that you pull that drop cloth tight at all times. I'm then going to trim off some of the excess. You definitely want to do this, otherwise sometimes the drop cloth can become a little bit bulky and the book does not close properly. Next, I'm going to make a little cut near the spine of the book. This is so that we're able to fold part of the drop cloth over. I'm going to repeat the same process on both sides. Remember, you can find a full product list in the description of this video and most of these products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. If you don't have access to drop cloth to cover your books, you could perhaps use a different type of material, perhaps some burlap. You could also paint the books instead. It just depends what look you're going for. I really love the look of the drop cloth on the books. I feel like it just gives it a lovely, earthy, vintage, natural feel. My vision for this project today is vintage gardening books. I felt like I wanted to create something that would look really cute sitting on a coffee table, and I definitely wanted to use more of IOD's seed catalogue transfer. I'm a little bit obsessed with it right now. Once I have all the sides glued down, I'm going to trim off the excess from the top of the spine and glue down the excess drop cloth, and then I will repeat the same process for the bottom of the book as well. Once I'm finished covering my book, I need to decide how I'm going to decorate it. I'm going to use this lovely design from IOD's Seed Catalogue Transfer, and I'm placing the design on top of the book. This is the front cover. I've laid the transfer down, and you can see I'm rubbing over the entire thing, and then I pick a corner and I start lifting that plastic as I'm rubbing. You definitely want to go slow here, especially if there's lots of small parts to your transfer. Drop cloth is really great for using transfers with. It does tend to stick really well, but I'm also bracing and holding the fabric down in places while I'm doing this so that I don't accidentally shift and pull that transfer off. I'm then going to burnish it really, really well. I'm then using a little piece of text that's from the same transfer pack. This is part of a design that I trimmed off in one of my previous videos. Here you especially need to hold that fabric in place while you are rubbing your transfer down. For our second book, I'm using another design from the Seed Catalogue. I'm repeating the same steps as before, peeling the backing off and then pressing my transfer down. So again, just be very mindful of the fact that you are putting this on drop cloth and it does tend to move and shift, and you want to just make sure that you're holding that still while you're doing that, and make sure you take your time. If you don't have access to these transfers, you could possibly use some decoupage paper instead. For the spine of this book, I'm going to take some text from the Ephermeral Melange transfer. I'm going to trim off part of that, and that's going to be on the side. I wanted to stick with sayings or titles that were floral related, so I felt that the Ephermeral Melange transfer paired really well with the Seed Catalogue design. If you don't have this particular transfer, you could perhaps use some stamps instead. For the third book, I'm going to grab another design from the Seed Catalogue. This is a really, really sweet one, and I'm glad that I can use it on this project. So again, I'm going to position it and then press down. Now, the difference between this one and the other transfers that we were using is this is one solid design. This definitely makes it a little bit easier when it comes to transferring your image because it's all attached. There's no little tiny pieces to forget or rip. It's all one piece, and it makes it a lot easier to get that all down. So I'm working really hard on the spine of the book here because there is a little bit of an indent, and then I'm going to pick up a corner and start rubbing the design down. And you can see as I start to pull that plastic away, it is coming away really easily and quite quickly. For the spine of this book, I'm also taking a part of some text from the Ephemeral Melange transfer. I feel like this will pair really well. So I'm just trimming off the part that I need and then adding it to the spine of the book. Again, just go really slow here. There is some fabric here that's a little bit looser than on the cover, so you just definitely need to take your time. So these books that we've created today are decor pieces, but to make them last a little bit longer and protect them, I'm going to give each book 2 coats of Dixie Belle's flat clear coat. I feel like that this will protect the transfer, but it will also make that drop cloth a little bit stiffer, so it's probably less likely to wrinkle and crease and crack that transfer. So 2 coats of this just to add a little bit of extra protection. And here are our finished floral books. I'm really happy with how these turned out. I think that they would look really sweet on a coffee table, on a sideboard, anywhere really. Let me know what you think of these in the comments. Our first project is inspired by Jamie Ray Vintage. I've wanted to give a rolling pin a makeover for a while, and we're tackling that today. So my first step after cleaning is applying 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Cotton Chalk Mineral Paint to the center part of the rolling pin. Once my cotton coats are dry, I'm going to come in with Dixie Belle's Vintage Duck Egg, and I'm going to apply it to the handles. So I'm going to be leaving part of the wood exposed. I think that's a nice touch, and we are going to be doing a bit of distressing a bit later as well on the handles. I just love this color, and the combination just feels very French farmhouse to me. Next, I'm going to be using IOD's Campagne stamp, and I have a thin mount out, and now I need to decide what I want on my rolling pin. So I love the roses, so I've positioned that down, and we're going to add the sweet little sheep there. I also wanted to add another element, so I've decided on the little rooster. Felt like that would fit nicely, and then I do decide to add some fruit as well. So I have got my rolling pin there as reference, and I do sort of test it out to see how much is actually going to show. Once I have my layout organized, I'm going to ink up the stamps with IOD's black permanent ink. I don't want to go too heavy, but I do need enough ink that it's going to show. So once I have enough ink on there, I'm going to very carefully clean up any areas where I've maybe got the ink where I shouldn't. Then I'm going to line up my rolling pin, and I found that I actually had to hold the center part of the pin itself because the rod inside was being a bit difficult. So I'm rolling it along the stamp, and then I have to look really closely at the bottom so that it doesn't overlap the design at the start. When I've pulled it away, I have noticed there's some areas that were a bit lighter than others. This is my first time doing this, so it's to be expected. So I'm going to grab the stamps that need a little bit of extra attention. This rooster needs a little bit more detail on the head, so I'm going to very carefully position that and press it down. I think in the future, I've definitely learnt that I need to apply a little bit more pressure. I was nervous about smudging the design, so I did go a little bit lighter than I should have. But as you can see, I'm quite easily able to come in now and add some of the details that were missed. So that was pretty easily fixed. I'm also going to fix up the little rooster's feet as well. And then once I've done that, I'm also going to come back in with part of the rose design and fix that up as well. Jamie and Zeb make this look so easy, but it's definitely something I'm going to have to practice. But I am loving this look, and I think it's such a fun way to update a rolling pin that's a bit plain, a bit tired. This is not a vintage rolling pin. It had little plastic spaces on each end, so I didn't feel bad painting this. When the ink is dry, I'm going to come in with some medium grit sandpaper, and I'm going to do a little bit of distressing on the handles to bring back some of that wood tone and around the edges of the rolling pin as well. I'm then going to seal the entire rolling pin with Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax and buff it out. And here's our finished rolling pin. I'm really happy with my first attempt at this. Definitely something I'm going to be trying again in the future. Let me know what you think of this one in the comments. For our first project, I'm using this drawer front. This actually came off a drawer that I pulled apart, and we're going to repurpose it today. So my first step after cleaning is to give it 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint. This paint sticks really well, so I don't have any need of any sort of bonding primer, and there was no evidence of bleeding, so I didn't need any stain blocking primer either. Once I finished painting the front and that was dry, I decided that I would give it a coat of paint as well to give it a more tidy look. This had some extra wood on it that I could not remove without damaging it, so we're just leaving that on today. Next, I'm going to be using these beautiful roses from the Ephermeral Melange transfer, and also these sweet birds from the Brocante transfer. Now, I'm going to cut this transfer apart. I want to have flowers on either side of the birds, so don't be afraid to cut up your transfers so that they fit your projects. I'm going to trim around this larger rose first so that it can go on one side. I'm trimming close to the petals so that it looks like it's just an individual rose, and then I'm going to also also come in and start trimming off some of the other parts. So I'm going to be taking off that single rose shortly and also separating some of the text. So this is definitely something you can do, and it definitely gives your project more of a custom look. Remember, you can find a full product list in the description below, and all these products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Now that I have a basic plan, I'm going to attach my birds. I know that I want them in the center, so I've peeled the backing off, and now I'm positioning the carrier sheet with the design in the center, and I'm going to press down. I like to go over the top of the whole design first, and then I pick a corner and I rub and lift that as I go, and then I burnish the transfer with the carrier sheet. I'm also going to trim off some of the excess of the rose design on the left hand side, and then I'm going to repeat the same process for that one, rubbing and burnishing it down. And then we can have a little look at what we want to do with the rose on the right. I decided that I wanted it facing up so that it was in a similar direction to the one on the left, so you can see that I'm just trimming it to fit the area, and then I'll peel off the backing and transfer that image down too. I'm then going to layer the smaller rose over the one on the right. You can definitely do this with transfers. So I'm going to rub and burnish that design down. And then I wanted to have a look at the text and how I wanted that laid out. And I'm also thinking about the fact that I'm going to be adding hooks. So I'm adding the text down the bottom left. I'll add some more text on the bottom right, and I'm just trying to keep it balanced. So I ended up putting that catalog and the date in the center down the bottom. Once I've done that, I am using some 220 grit sandpaper to lightly sand the transfers to give them an aged look. And then I'm going to use some of Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in clear to seal the entire piece. I'm then using some of Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in brown just around the edge because I want this to look a little bit more like a frame around the outside. Now I already have that clear wax down, so that's going to give me the freedom to be able to come back shortly and wipe back as much or as little as I want. If you're giving this project a go at home and you don't have access to brown wax, you could create a paint wash by watering down some chalk paint, or you could perhaps use a glaze instead. Now I'm using a microfiber cloth to wipe back a lot of the excess. I don't want it too dark, but I really like how that wax goes into all of the details of this wooden drawer front that has some nicks and dings and some interesting patterns in the wood. So that wax is really highlighting that. And anywhere that I've gone a bit too dark, I'm using a bit more clear wax on a brush or also on a microfiber cloth to pull it back a bit more. That's the beauty of having the clear wax down first. You have the freedom to do this. Next, I'm going to use some sandpaper to go around some of the edges and distress them back so we can see some of that darker wood. I'm swapping between a 220 grit and then an 80 grit in certain areas. The paint is really adhering well, so sometimes you just need that more coarse sandpaper to be able to pull it back. I'm also using a wet wipe to pull back any of the excess dust. Now I'm going to add some hooks. Some of you might have been thinking, why didn't you fill up that hole? Well, we have hooks going over the top of those. So I'm attaching 2 hooks on either side. Once I've got the hooks on, I'll put some attachments on the back for hanging. And here's a look at our finished project. I'm so happy with how this turned out. I think it's amazing what you can do with old cabinet doors or drawer fronts when you add some paint and some beautiful IOD transfers. Let me know what you think of this project in the comments. Our next project is this lovely grey jug that I got from IKEA. It is already gorgeous, but I wanted to add something else a little bit special. So I'm grabbing IOD's Traditional Pots transfer. There are 4 pages of beautiful designs in black, blue and white. And I was tossing between a few different designs, trying to work out what one I wanted, but I thought what's cuter than a flower pot? So I grabbed the flower design and cut it out. I'm using that pair of scissors there just to steady the jug, and then I'm adjusting the design just just making sure that I have it centered, and then I will start to rub and burnish the design using the transfer stick that comes in the pack of transfers. So I'm just rubbing and working in sections. You'll see that the design is releasing pretty easy onto this surface. As the design releases, I'm pulling up the plastic and just making sure that all of the design has been burnished. I'm then using the same plastic to rub over the design. Next, we're having a look at this beautiful white vase. I love this. It looks like a mini crock to me, and I thought it would be perfect with a transfer on it. So I'm grabbing the traditional pots transfer again, and I think that black would look best against that beautiful white background. So I'm just having a little look through the designs here. I thought about adding that rooster, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be correct. And after sort of positioning it there, I decided that maybe it wasn't the best design. So I did sort of go between a few different designs there, and in the end you'll see that I did decide to grab the one that has the crown and the laurels. I just thought that it really suited the vase. So after peeling the paper backing off, I am positioning the design, and then I'm going to start burnishing. So again, I'm using the stick that came in the pack, and I'm just rubbing and also lifting the plastic as I go. This has a lot of small lettering, so I'm being very careful not to lift the plastic up too far until I'm sure that my whole design has transferred. Then I'm using the plastic to burnish further. I really love these transfer designs. They are the perfect French country touch. And here's our finished jug. I love the traditional pots transfer. I think each and every one of those sweet labels looks amazing. And how gorgeous does our vase look? I think that that transfer really just took it to a whole nother level. I added a plant to it. You can see that it just really finishes off the design. Let me know in the comments what you think of our little projects here. Is this something that maybe you could do with something you've got at home? Final project today is this frame that I got for 50 cents. It was still in the plastic, so I'm going to give it a good clean, and then I'm going to take it apart. This time I could take the glass out, and I'm grabbing the Trimmings 3 mold and working my Jovi air dry clay into one of the designs there. I'm going to cast 4 of the same Trimmings molds there, and we are going to add that detail to the frame. Next, I'm going to arrange the castings on the frame. You can see that I am positioning it and tearing off the excess clay where needed. And I also decided that to make it look a little bit tidier, that I was going to add something else in the corners. So I'm gluing down the molds that I've already cast. I'm using a strong wood glue, and then I am grabbing the fleur-de-lis mold, and I'm going to cast the smaller of the fleur-de-lis designs, and I'm going to put one in each corner. If you're new to making things with your IOD mold, I definitely suggest dusting them with cornstarch. This will definitely help you release your clay easier. Once I have all the fleur-de-lis cast, I'm going to glue each of them down, being careful to gently bend them to mold them to my other castings. I'm then using a wet wipe to wipe off any excess glue. The next day I discovered that I had quite a few gaps where my clay had shrunk. I usually paint my molds, but I didn't this time. I think that may be why it shrunk so much. I'm using a bit of excess clay to fill in the gaps. I'm being very, very gentle though, and I'm just working it in, trying to make it as seamless as possible. I'm also using the end of a paintbrush to work the clay into those trickier areas. I'm then using a wet wipe to just gently smooth out my clay. I'm then using Dixie Belle's French Linen Chalk Mineral Paint to paint my entire frame. I'm being very gentle as I am still working with some fresh clay where I filled in the gaps, and I am changing direction of my brush to make sure that I'm getting paint into all of those little nooks and crannies. On my second coat, I found that using a water mister while I was painting helped move the paint into those trickier areas to get to, and it also helped give me a bit of a smoother finish. Once my paint was dry, I sealed the entire frame using Dixie Belle's Gloss Clear Coat. Once my clear coat was dry, I started layering colours. I first used Dixie Belle's Au Naturel Voodoo Gel Stain, and I'm using a wet wipe to wipe back the excess so that the Au Naturel colour is sitting in the details. We're going for a weathered and worn layered effect here. We're going to be using a few different tones to achieve this. When the Au Naturel layer was dry, I grabbed Dixie Belle's Tobacco Road Voodoo Gel Stain, and again I am laying it on and then I am wiping it back, and I am loving how these two colours are working together. You could definitely achieve a similar look with waxes or glaze if you do not have the products I'm using today. In some areas I used my water mister to remove even more product. When the Tobacco Road stain layer was dry, I came in with some of Dixie Belle's Fluff Chalk Mineral Paint, and I'm actually dry brushing the paint on. I'm hitting the high points, and I'm also using a wet wipe to wipe back any areas where it's a little bit too heavy. If you have not tried dry brushing, it's where you get paint on your brush, you then dab off the excess and you use what little paint you have on your brush to paint your surface. You also want to use a light hand, and you will find that it really highlights and brings out details. When that coat's dry, I'm coming in with Dixie Belle's Gold Gilding Wax, and I'm just hitting some of the details. I'm not going too heavy here. Next, we're going to work on the artwork to go in the frame. So I've cut out some drop cloth, and I'm using the insert that was already in the frame to work out how big I need it to be. I'm then trimming off the excess. You could definitely use paper or cardstock for this step instead, but I really loved the idea of using drop cloth. I thought that it would contrast nicely with the transfer that we're about to use. So I'm grabbing the Brocante transfer again, and you can see that I am using the frame over the top of the possible designs to decide which one I am going to use. I picked this one. I thought that the colors were lovely and I loved the typography. I'm going to have the hard backing from the frame behind my drop cloth as I apply my transfer. This is going to help me ensure that it adheres. I've peeled off the paper backing, and now I'm using the transfer stick to begin burnishing my design. So I'm rubbing carefully and holding the drop cloth in place as I go, and I'm also lifting the plastic and checking that I have everything adhered before I move on. I didn't have any issues with the transfer sticking to the drop cloth. I found it really easy actually, and I really love this look. So I'm gently running my fingers over the design to make sure that it's all adhered, and then I am going to make sure that it fits nicely, make sure I don't need to trim off anything extra, and then I'm cleaning off the glass that's going to go over the top of my design. And I'm not going to have to seal this because it does have the glass protecting it. So I've put the backing back in and we're done. I'm really happy with how this lovely artwork came out. You can sit it on a shelf, or it does have the attachments on the back to be hung on the wall. I'm definitely going to have to do more with transfers on drop cloth. Our first project is this wooden cutting board that I think I picked up for about $1. My first step is to clean it thoroughly with Dixie Belle's White Lightning. This is a deglosser and a degreaser, and this is going to get it to be a great base for crafting, and then I'm going to rinse off my cleaner. I'm then going to decant some of Dixie Belle's Tobacco Road Voodoo Gel stain, and I'm going to cover the entire cutting board with this stain and wipe back any excess. I want to deepen the tone and give this more of a French country look. To get the tone that I want, I'm going to have to apply 2 coats. When that's dry, I'm going to seal the entire board with Dixie Belle's Gloss Clear Coat. I'm then going to be using IOD's new Millots Pages transfer, and this is 8 pages of beautiful botanical style designs. There is so much to choose from in this pack, and for today, however, I am going to be using the vegetables, but as you can see, there is a lot to choose from in this pack, so you are really spoilt for choice. I thought that the vegetables would look great on this and go perfect in a kitchen, so I'm removing the whole page and then I'm trying to work out how I want it to sit. Now, I don't want to just put on a big page of the design. I don't want to waste this transfer, so instead I'm going to individually cut out the pieces that I want to have on my cutting board and arrange them. This is a bit of a fiddly transfer. Everything is quite close together, so I definitely recommend some smaller scissors so that you can move around the smaller designs, but it's definitely worth it so that you can make the transfer go across multiple projects. There's not really a right or wrong way to go about this if you're going to give it a try. I just went with groupings of 2 or 3, and I also thought about colours. I wanted some green, but I also wanted some orange and some yellows just to have a bit of interest. And then I'm also trimming out some of the lettering down the bottom. Now I'm ready to start transferring my image, so I've taken the backing off, I'm pressing the image down, and then I'm going to start burnishing each of the transfers with the transfer stick that comes in your pack. So you can see I am rubbing it, but I'm also lifting the plastic as I go. This definitely helps your design to release, and if you miss a spot, don't panic, just put it back down and start rubbing again. I'm sure I'll probably have people asking me how can you then use this in a kitchen, but honestly this is just going to be a decor piece. I will be sealing this, but I would not recommend this to be used with anything hot, so I definitely think that it will lean up against a kitchen backsplash or hang on a wall and look pretty. Next, I'm sealing my entire board with Dixie Belle's Gloss Clear Coat. And here's our finished chopping board decor piece. I had a lot of fun using the new Millots Pages transfer. There are so many beautiful designs to choose from here. Let me know what you think of this project in the comments. Our final project today are these sweet little milk pitchers here. I got them for $1 each at the thrift store. 2 of them were the same. This one was a little bit taller, and I thought that they would be perfect for our craft today. Now they are ceramic, so I am adding several coats of Dixie Belle's Slick Stick Bonding Primer because I knew I wanted to add some paint to these and brighten them up a little bit. I let my slick stick dry for 24 hours and then I painted each of the milk pitchers with 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Cotton Chalk Mineral Paint. I'm just showing this one because each of them looks exactly the same. Now we are going to be using the beautiful Crockery stamp for this project today, so I am inking up the first stamp with my ink pad, and then I am going to actually take it off the backing. I decided that it was probably easier to apply it to a curved surface without the backing, so I'm carefully holding the stamp in place with my thumb in the center and then using my other hand to gently press the rest of the stamp down. Now unfortunately I did not get a perfect stamp here, but in a lot of ways that's probably more realistic because these old crocs do not have perfect images on them as they age. So I'm repeating the same process with another design from the Crockery stamp, and again I'm inking up the stamp and then gently pressing it against the jug. I did miss a couple of little letters down the bottom there, but it was pretty easy for me to carefully reposition the stamp and to get a better impression the next go. It was a pretty hot day while I was doing this, so I am using a wet wipe to clean my stamps off in between before the ink has time to set. Next, I'm using this lovely Devonshire cream design on this slightly larger jug, and again, I'm just carefully pressing the design down. This is probably one of my favorite stamps from the Crockery stamp set, and in my last video I did an impression with this one, so if you haven't seen it, go back and check out my last video. Next, I'm running the ink pad along the edges of the little jugs there. I'm running them along the top and on the handles, and on these smaller ones I also added it around the base as well. Finally, I'm adding a few little cracks from the Vintage Textures crackle stamp. I'm inking up the stamp and then just randomly pressing it against the jug lightly. To finish these off, I'm sealing each of them with Dixie Belle's Gloss Clear Coat. And here are our finished little milk jugs. I'm really happy with how these turned out. I think that they are very sweet and would definitely look cute with some little flowers in them. I didn't paint the inside so that if somebody wanted to, they could put some water in there and some fresh little flowers. I think that these are just very sweet. Let me know what you think of these in the comments. I really hope that you enjoyed this video collection, and you can find the products used in this video on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share this out to a friend that you think might enjoy it.